Hi, I'm Sean.
I'm Rhonda.
We're excited to be with you today to talk about empathy with your spouse when you're resolving conflict.
So this can help us connect with each other during it when we're self-aware, but we're also aware of our spouse, which is what empathy is all about.
It is. When we're resolving conflict, we need to be self-aware so we understand what the emotions we're feeling are.
Right. So before we can empathize, we have to be able to control our own emotions. But if we don't know what our emotions are, how can we control them?
If we don't know what we're experiencing, what the emotions that we're having in that conflict are, it's likely that we're going to act out of control.
Well, and the thing is, too, we might interpret what our spouse is trying to communicate because of what's going on inside of us. And it could kind of twist that meaning for us.
We want to remain objective when we're working through conflict with each other. We don't need to be, just stuck on our own viewpoint and our own perspective.
Because if we don't remain objective, we assume that we know already what our spouse is trying to say. But what if we assume I don't know already and I really should pay attention so I can figure this out?
Part of that is being able to set aside our own agenda. Sometimes we can be so stuck on our own way of seeing things that we're not willing to look at it from another vantage point.
What is my agenda? It's what I'm trying to accomplish in this conversation. Am I trying to prove that I'm right or that my spouse is wrong? Am I set on helping you understand what your problem is here?
Another thing is that we need to be able to read the emotional signals that our spouse is sending. This can come in the way of tone of voice, facial expressions. We don't need to just blow those off. Those are messages.
What is my spouse feeling and thinking when we're talking? If I see some sort of negative feedback, tone of voice that's challenging for me, or a facial expression I struggle with, there's information to be had there. And I can seek it out. It can be a time to make my spouse aware, but it especially could be time for me to become aware. Hey, what are you feeling right now? What do you think I'm saying?
Sometimes we can just think, well, I know what that look means, or I know what that tone of voice means. What if we ask questions to find out, hey, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. It looks like you've got a tone of voice or a facial expression going on there. What does that mean?
And I think sometimes in the marriage, we take things for granted, and we're like, well, it sounds this way, it must therefore be this way. It feels this way, it must therefore be this way. As if the way it appears and the way it sounds to me and the feelings I experience identify the truth of what's being expressed. But how many times have you shared your heart only to be misunderstood, misinterpreted, and somebody knew just a fraction of what was going on, but they were sure they knew the whole picture? Well, we don't like it when it's done to us, so why would we risk doing that to the person closest to us?
Asking questions. We need to stop. Hey, what do you mean by that? Help me understand. The curiosity is going to help your spouse to open up to you and talk to you about what's going on.
So with empathy, I'm seeking not only to understand the meaning of the words being communicated to me, but also the feelings behind those words. And so once I understand and I've confirmed with my spouse that we're on the same page, I'm getting your message, then I need to follow through with some sort of action to make a connection with what was just shared with me.
Empathy followed with action is kind of likened to maybe jumping in the water to save somebody, and you're not just watching from the shore, but you're in there with them to help rescue them.
I think something that makes it difficult for people to empathize, connect with head and heart, is because we don't always agree. Sometimes we think that I can empathize with you if I can agree with you.
Wow.
And it's like we don't have to agree with everybody.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, we're probably not. There's probably going to be very few people that we would agree on every point with.
That's true.
So what do we do when sometimes there are points we don't agree, or I don't see what you're saying, but I can still validate that's your position.
Wow.
That's the way it feels to be you right now.
Wow, what a skill that would be for us to develop, to be able to connect not only with our spouse, but this also works with other people, where we can connect with what they're saying even though we don't see it the same way.
Right, because we can say, oh, well, my spouse is seeing it in a different way than I do, as if the way I saw it wasn't the way it is. Well, guess what? You're going to see it very differently. You're going to experience it very differently. Is that okay? Is it okay for you to be you and your spouse to be themselves?
We all have different experiences and backgrounds in life that have brought us to the point we are today. And, each person is that way, and we need to respect the different experiences that each of us have.
And we have to be careful not to label or tag the way my spouse interprets situations as something bad, and I'm the only one that knows how to interpret these things right.
Putting labels on our spouse or other people, I think, just help us to minimize, cause us to not really feel what's going on.
But really, if we're going to connect, if we're going to really get to know each other on a heart level, we want to be understood. We certainly wouldn't want our spouse dismissing the way we see it and say, no, that's not right. It's this way or it's that way. No, you want to be heard, and your spouse does too. And so to connect and to empathize, we have to accept this is the reality. This is what my spouse sees and interprets as what's going on. We could still share our side of the story, but that doesn't mean it's going to change the spouse's side of the story, and we still have to be able to connect with that.
Wow, that is so valuable. There's things that we can do that'll make it easier for our spouse to empathize with us. And one of those things is sharing your highs and lows. Just take maybe 5 minutes and do that each day.
We've been talking all this time about maybe empathizing when we're clashing, but this is empathizing outside of clashing. It's bothering to take that extra effort to get to know the other person. What was going on inside you during the day today?
Sometimes I've heard it referred to as like giving the weather update. The highs and lows that what your spouse experienced that caused them maybe to feel a little bit irritable that day, or to feel happy.
Once we hear our spouse's highs and lows, it gives us an opportunity to get inside our spouse's head and heart to understand how my spouse thinks and feels and interprets things that are going on around him.
One thing that we need to make sure that we're doing is that we're verbalizing our thoughts and feelings. Sometimes stuff is going on inside of us and we don't turn it into words. I think sometimes men have to work on that a little bit more than our female counterparts. And so we want to make sure that we are turning our feelings and our thoughts into words so that our spouse can connect with us.
We don't want to assume the other person just knows.
Yeah.
Well, of course you would know, and it's like, well, yeah, if I thought like you, but I don't think like you, and I don't know. So please don't assume the other person should be a mind reader, because we can't. We may know an awful lot and be really smart, but we can't read minds.
Yeah. Wow, that is so valuable. And when we express a problem to our spouse, we need to be specific. We need to make sure that we're giving the details. Sometimes I think it's easy for some of us to just give the headlines.
Yeah, if we're not specific, if we're not clear enough, then we leave a lot to the other person to guess. And guess what? Because of the way they interpret things, because they're the opposite sex from us, they might interpret it very differently. Show me respect. Well, if you're saying that to a man, he's going to take it one way. If you say it to a woman, she's going to take it a different way. And you might find yourself disappointed that you didn't get back what you wanted.
Yeah, we don't want to be vague and expect our spouse to know what's going on with us, and we've not really opened up our mouth or given enough detail that they can connect with what's going on.
Jesus came to be a merciful and faithful high priest, walking in our shoes, becoming like a person on this earth, being touched with the feelings of our infirmities, our weaknesses, the things that challenge us. And so if we can do that for the other person, be like Christ, doesn't that sound familiar? Like something we as believers should do?
Yeah.
If we can walk in the other person's shoes, so to speak, to understand what it must feel like to be my spouse and be more compassionate, then we're more able to connect with it.
Wow. If we can feel what they're feeling, then it's not very likely that we're going to be doing the things that hurt them if it hurts us just as much as it hurt them.
And so basically, empathy shapes us. It shapes the way we respond.
Yeah.
If our goal is to really understand my spouse instead of, you need to understand me, if that's my goal, I'm probably not going to hear. But it shapes us when we can truly hear what the other one is experiencing.
So what does empathy in action look like?
Well, first of all, we need to pay attention so we can understand.
Yeah.
When we're laying aside our own agenda, we can focus better. So all those things involved in paying attention so that I'm really listening to hear something outside of myself.
Can I pay attention to you while I'm looking at my phone?
Right.
I'm not going to be seeing those facial expressions and those things that you're trying to communicate.
We have to lay aside distractions.
That's right. Next thing is you want to be quiet. Sometimes we can be too quick to speak, too quick to say what we're thinking, and we need to listen more.
And so when our spouse is sharing his or her heart, well, that makes us the listener. And so if I switch and now I'm sharing me, guess what? I'm now the speaker. And we have two speakers and nobody's listening and we're not going to get anywhere.
If we are saying something, we need to only speak enough to keep the momentum going of what our spouse is sharing, to keep things flowing.
Like, tell me more. Wow, thank you for sharing that. What else were you feeling?
Yeah, those are invitational comments to hear more and to be able to connect in a better way with what they're saying.
Make sure you're tracking with the emotions behind the words. That's going to be one of the biggest ways that you'll connect, is when you notice those things. What are you feeling and what made you feel that way?
So we want to listen to our spouse sharing like we're listening to a story, not one that we're trying to change the storyline, but just one that we can hear out what they're relating.
Be prepared to learn something new. You want to really be listening for something outside of yourself.
And we want to look at hearing our spouse's heart, what they're sharing, like this is a privilege for me that you're opening up and you're sharing your heart. This is a way that we can really connect with our spouse, empathize with them.